Sorry, do you want to say something, Albert? Yeah.
Yeah, just to say, some of the street names you mentioned, in the context of the 50s and 60s, of course, has pre-echoes of the 70s of Frestonia, because of course there was the whole pre-republic or whatever it's called of Frestonia, which was, you know, basically one road and a couple of houses, right in the middle of that area, which existed as a kind of a, well, obviously it wasn't, you know, what they might have wanted to be. It wasn't really cut off from the rest of society and running itself like, you know, Christiania or something in Copenhagen. But it was. It did exist for quite a few years as an entity where people had a consciousness they were trying to do something different in it. People used to go there, you know, as a base for social experiments and things. And of course that was right in the middle of this area as well. I don't know what the era you're talking about, how that feeds into that.
It's I was talking about that Frestonia. Well, it's part of Nottingdale, where, or actually in Frestonia is where the '58 riots started, and it was sort of an enclave in the really poor working class area. That, as you say, yeah, and it was in the late '70s. I sort of just about remember that I lived there in the '80s. I was in short life housing by the time there, and I think it was like a success that they. I mean, there's still actual citizens of Frestonia living there in a housing co-op development, but that area is really being sort of picked on by the property developers, being portrayed with the Westfields shopping mall just over the other side. But I think, well, things are better in Nottingdale than they were, and there's still sort of social housing that, I mean, in some ways I think it's all true in the papers. The area's totally gentrified. It's just a tourist attraction, but there are still poor people. You still need poor people to do service industry in Notting Hill, and there's still another sort of Notting Hill story carrying on. I like to try.
Ambition was to get the poor people.
That's what they,
in order to push them up into
Push them somewhere else, yeah.
Basically, they did not want to.
And that was the plan, wasn't it? Yeah.
Burden on the rates, whatever, all the time. They didn't want the loan obligations. I mean, they finally were bullied into doing Lancaster West, and that's about the only thing they did. The campaign we ran was to get compulsory purchase for Colville, which was absolutely.
But I think that was a success in a way. But there's still, or well, whether it's a success, Kensington Housing Trust, Notting Hill Housing Trusts, but those. There is social housing. It is possible to live in those Notting Hill houses without being an international banker.
Which was quite separate, which is the GLC were operating in Goulburn, the area immediately to the north of the motorway. So again, you've got these different communities. The motorway split the community identifiably in a way. So Goulburn's Haverstock was one side, Goulburn was the other side, Nottingdale over there, and they had hardly any interconnections at all, except having a people, I mean, various things like the People's Association attempted to unite, but very little.
I mean, that's what they say with the Westway, that it destroyed the fabric of the old community.
They say that 5,000 houses were destroyed. I can't really believe it's as high as that, but basically they smashed it straight through.
Yeah. You mentioned the adventure playgrounds and Power Square and that kind of stuff, and it occurs to me like that a lot of the land that was seized and a lot of community support was around children and children's play.
Yeah.
And that's quite a lot of a contrast, like with then and now, like, you know, sort of like we can see why kind of like the counterculture, like, you know, sort of like Neville and all that kind of stuff, like, was promoting play, but like, you know, why do people think that had so much support from the community? Why would that inspire 500 people to volunteer for the summer project? like, you know, kind of like support.
They get it from
children's play.
outside for someone.
But like, you know, the short loads volunteers, like you find, but like, you know, sort of like within the community itself, like, you know, kind of like there must have been, like, you know, surely some kind of like upsurge of support for children's playing, like, and for taking land for children, like, you know, kind of like which I think.
I think there was. I think they did make a local the Bohemian beatnik hippie. So
yes, I mean,
they made it through the play group.
There was very little concern, so it seemed to me. I mean, the play group was started by Ellen Zammett and Pet Price, not by musicians as it were.
No.
Sure, yeah.
And this is really the point. They were people who lived there and got families there and neighbours.
So I mean, given all the other conditions he was talking about, like, you know, kind of like, wouldn't it? I mean, it seems to me that it would have been easier to organise like people and to get people riled up about, like, you know, other conditions, like, you know, sort of like
this is the problem of community
rather than children's play. Like, you know, kind of like, it seems an extraordinary thing to get people motivated on, like, given that, like, you know, most of the time when you're talking about children to people, they want to put them in a box, like, you know, kind of like, and shut them up, don't they? Like, you know, you find it hard to get that much support for children's play these days.
Well, that's quite difficult, because I think one of the things that Tom pointed out is that, and I think you have to remember, like, when I was a kid, I used to play football on the street, but there weren't so many cars around. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is a problem, because I mean, you were talking about, you know, kids getting run over and stuff like that. I mean, like, you know, people could play out on the street, because actually the number of people who own cars were quite few. I mean, they were quite privileged, do you know what I mean? In fact, nobody when I was growing up owned a car. Right, and then obviously these issues then become more predominant as things go on. I mean, you know, when they let their kid out into a street now to play, because I mean, cars are going all the time. I mean, everybody, you know, either walk, use public transport, or have a bike. You know, cars were actually quite rare.
Political link there, actually, because when we pulled down the fences around High Square, that was organised by the Vietnam Solidarity Committee.